Okay, so what is the Fashion Tech Hub? FashTech Hub. We are the community that we support the fashion technology and fashion innovation opportunities, and we are based in Taiwan. So for some of you may know that we have a lot of supply chain resources in Taiwan, not only from the textile side, but also we have a lot of consumer electronic manufacturers and R&D centers in Taiwan. So that is a start why we make we establish this community, because at the beginning we found that many people, they try to do the fashion technology prototype, or that they want to do something different, something new, but they for some of them are fashion designers, so they are not really understand the industry of consumer electronic, and some consumer electronic companies, they want to build something new, but they try to collaborate with designers, but they don't know how. So that's a reason why we try to bridge the gap. For our activities, we do the monthly event like today. We have a hybrid. So this month we have this online event, but for the next month we will also have an online event as well. But sometimes we will still have some physical event, but due to the geographic limitation, for now we only do it in Taiwan. But now we open the border, so we will have other physical events in the worldwide. And we also do the workshop to have like a material science 101, IoT 101, business strategy, and we also we also collaborate with other organizations to have the hackathon exhibition, and we also support the STAR program boot camp in Taiwan as well. So I'm Claire. I'm the founder of FashTech Hub. My background is more related to the textile and the digital color management. And that's the reason why I started to do the fashion technology back to 2016. And now I have a small studio to support the fashion technology, especially for the product development part and strategy. And we also have the Qing, who is our big supporter. And she has more than 20 years experience in the fashion brand and the news media part. So these are the topics we are interested in. You can see that it's quite wide range. So feel free to contact me if you think that you have an interest to talk more about any topic of this. And we are going to have the first Asia Fashion Tech Week next year. It should be in the middle of October. So we are also looking for the potential speakers, people who come to exhibit their products or their shows. So feel free to contact us if you have any questions or you have any interest of collaboration with us. So I'll pass the micro to our moderator Qing today. Hi, Qing.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Qing. So in today's session, we are able to have JENS Laugesen, if I pronounce it right, as the speaker, and warmly welcome JENS. And I'm sure that you are as excited as me to learn from Jane's experience regarding digital fashion or couture and the metaverse. And Jane will lead us through his fashion creativity journey later. But before that, let me say a few words about him. So James is an experienced fashion academic and fashion designer and creative director. And he holds 2 master's degrees in fashion management from Institut Français de la Mode in Paris, and MA in women's wear from University of the Arts London, Central St. Martin's in London. And James has gained multiple awards in London Fashion Week, Denmark, and Paris as well. And he has collaborated with international luxury and ready-to-wear brands such as Calvin Klein, J. Mendel, Net-a-Porter, Yorks as a design consultant and creative director. And as I mentioned in my LinkedIn post, that Jen is preparing a call out to the international fashion tech community for collaboration for his projects that will launch in London Fashion Week in 2023, and he will reveal more details in his presentation later. So now let's please join me in welcoming James Laugesen. James, your call.
Thank you very much. It's very kind of you to invite me to this event. Very interested to learn more about the fashion tech hub that you are developing. I think it's great that you're building a support network to bridge between the creatives and the technology, because I think that is the main issues of the industry, that how can we make the creative brains work together with the technology brains, and how can we create the future together? And I think this is a thread that is in my talk that I'll be doing to you. So let me just get over to my presentation, and I'll tell you my journey from microbiology to haute couture and then to the metaverse, basically, as we talked about this. So let me just try to do this right. So we share the whole screen, and then let me know if you don't see the whole screen, but I think you do. And then I will do full screen. Yes. So we go into the presentation. And hopefully you will enjoy some of the gifts that have been integrated into the presentation for this talk. Yeah. So basically, I'm going to talk to you how I evolved from initially wanting to study microbiology to then studying haute couture and be deconstructing my career in Paris with a brand in the 2000s, and then becoming a fashion consultant. And then lately with the pandemic, how I actually decided to transform my brand into the metaverse. So this is just a quick overview of my history. As a consultant, I am today with like more than 25 years experience of the international fashion industry, from working in Paris, studying in Paris, evolving to London, where I did my MA in St. Martin's, and then I launched my brand in London Fashion Week. And since 2008, I've been consulting for all these brands around the world, collaborating in many ways as capacity as a consultant on anything from concept to head design to research, design development, teaching teams how to work better. I have also worked for LG Corporation in South Korea, where I was creative director of one of the luxury brands, and for Calvin Klein New York, I was also London-based advisor to creative director Francis Costa at the time, and worked with many brands around the world. And each time I work with brands, they're trying to help them solve their problems. And I think this is the thing I'm good at, helping people to resolve problems and look at their problems from different angles. And it's the same methodology I kind of use when I work with tech. This is just a quick overview of my history. So initially, I was not meant to study fashion. I was actually very good in science and math in high school. So I got top of the grades with math and science. And my interest at the time was genetics and cloning. It was in the late 80s. So I was really interested into the ethics of where could we allow ourselves to go, creating the future with genetics and cloning, because I thought it's a really interesting field of science, but also philosophy. And I was always interested in merging the scientific side of myself with either creative or philosophical sides, because I think science by itself becomes a little bit boring, but when you merge it with other things, it becomes more interesting. Then it was like an industrial sewing machine that helped me to discover that I actually wanted to not study microbiology, but to continue to engineering garments, And it's interesting how the idea of the craft and the industrial sewing machine led me to study couture in Paris at Chambres Syndicales de Couture. So from the machine to the hand, and then I learned about fashion management at SENS TRILOGY, because it was really about how to think about all this craft that you have learned. How can you make that into like a marketing thinking? And it gave me a career in Paris before then I joined St. Martin's. And at St. Martin's, you can see I have marked like 9/11 was really like pivotal to me. This kind of transformation of the world as we knew at the time, and how this has informed my future practice is really part of the design philosophy that's called hybrid reconstruction. I'll tell you a little bit more about. And you can also see in 2008, I actually closed my brand just before the financial crash. So these crashes around the world have actually been like pivotal in my career each time, leading me to become a consultant for Calvin Klein and all the big companies. And then with the pandemic, when it started the pandemic, I realized this is really a time to reboot digitally. And this is kind of what led us to where we are today. So I'll just go through my story, going back to what I was studying at the time when I entered St. Martin's MA. So you probably all have heard about St. Martin's MA. It's kind of the most creative MA course in the world. It's an art school. So it's not a science school, it's not a fashion school, but it's really an art school. So the process and approach to design is always from an art process. And with my traditional background in couture, that was more trained on craftsmanship and technology and how to construct volumes. It was really about how I could deconstruct and reconstruct my own past to become something else. And because it was in 2000, I thought we are in the future now, you know, it's like Space Odyssey 2001. So, you know, we are in the future. So what is in fashion after deconstruction was the big question I was asking me. Because in fashion, since the late 80s, Martin Margiela and Laugesen were like the big idols, and they were kind of deconstructing the classical uniform. And I felt if I have to propose something new, what is this new post-deconstruction? So I spent a lot of time writing my theory, looking into modernism, postmodernism, and then what I call hybrid reconstruction. So it's a lot of theoretical research that was joined up with also deconstructing garments, looking into concepts. I was intrigued by the UN Studio to the left. It's from a book that they have wrote, and they had this notion of hybridization. So it was their thinking practice from the 90s, but then they wrote about it, and UN Studio is today one of the biggest architect firms in the world that are building really amazing buildings. But I spent a lot of time of theorizing, you know, and I thought, if I look into the way they think about the future, how can I take away the words that I don't like, and how can I focus on the words that I like? So it's really like a research process, leading me to all these names and concepts that were part of my research. And then to the right, you see a physical post I saw on the streets in London that I photographed that really coined my philosophy, you know, genetically modified, that talked to my past. The future is what I wanted to do. And then the hybrid reconstruct was these two words that kind of led me to, okay, this is my concept, hybrid reconstruction. So I just wanted to show you this to show you how in a traditional art school tradition, you kind of develop concepts from things you find around yourself. My theoretical research became this like magazine zine that I edited and was like part of my MA project. And then just to show you this kind of organizing the thinking process into what is the modernist, the postmodernist, and the post-deconstructing thinking. And why am I showing you all this? Because I think this research I did at the time about the post-deconstruction is really still very valid for the metaverse that we are today talking about, because I think the metaverse is just a manifestation of what started in the post-9/11 era. And it's only 20 years ago, so it takes time, history takes time, art history takes time, and you know, things evolve slowly. Again, my approach to the research was triptych, like construction, deconstruction, and reconstruction. So it's kind of organizing things in that maybe a little bit scientific manner. But I was also looking into, you know, visually, how does these kind of art forms transform from one era to the other? And when you start to do this kind of visual amalgamation, you can see how what was like before collage together, it became Photoshop together, and then became glitch together. You can see how technology advances our design thinking, but at the base is the same idea of hybridity, going back to the surrealist. And this is kind of what I wanted to focus on in my practice. And I realized this is also what I found in the work of UN Studio. This is an overview of what they were looking at in one of the books that I was mentioning. They were really looking into this kind of the idea of the manimal to the left. It's like a half man, a half animal. It's the morphing of the two objects together. And I think this is also a bit what talked to the microbiologist in me, you know, how you can do cloning of genetics or a crossbreeding of like of different animals into like new kind of genetics. You know, and to the right you can see how these kind of genetics become many different outcomes. The hybridity is also something from modernist high design thinking. You know, the surrealist, you know, it's really like a very powerful way of thinking. Deconstructing garments was part of my analogy, and I saw in between like my deconstructing the jackets. In the middle, you know, to the right, you see a garment that I did during my first year at MA, but it's still part of the design thinking I'm doing today and relaunching my brand with London Fashion Week in 2 months' time. But then I was joining this up together with the research to the left from UN Studio, where they were talking about this kind of Moebius house to the bottom part. And then you see what a Moebius strip is. It's like something that's plain, and then you twist it around and put it together. So it's like a 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional object. And I really like this idea of two-dimensional, three-dimensional, you know, because this is a really good way for design thinking to come alive. Then we had the crash of 9/11. That changed everything for me, and it changed everything for the world, because it was a huge catastrophe. But it was not the biggest catastrophe that would come, because I think the pandemic that came after was even bigger. And then with the wars we have ongoing around the world, you know, we are really living in a really, like, I still think in the aftermath of this 9/11, this kind of era, it's still what we are living. It's still the same deconstruction process of what the society was. In Asia, we also have many tensions with wars and possible wars. In Iran, it's not a good place, you know, there's many tensions around the world. And I think these are things that we manifest as humanity, and that we as humanity has to resolve through positive thinking, through collaboration, through democracy, through communication, and through creativity. But that's another point. But yeah, so 9/11 really was pivotal to me. I thought, okay, Twin Towers is on the floor. What will a little child do? And because maybe I am a Danish person, I said, like, Lego blocks, I would start to build new things. So these kind of defragmented garments, you know, this is what I kind of start to put together again to create new shapes in tailoring that I look together with. It looks a bit like architecture shapes, so I did. And this is again the process in a very analog way. I write on things, I photograph things, I photocopy things. I have never learned Photoshop, for instance. Some people would be quite shocked by that, but I still don't know how to use Photoshop. And I don't do close 3D really. I can do a little bit manipulation with it, but I just never had time to learn all these skills. So I do believe that this kind of old school art process way of communicating your ideas is still very powerful. I teach a lot of students around the world, and I always advise them to it's good to have a digital portfolio that you can show online, but it's also very good to have a physical one. So once you have a chance to meet people, they can feel your soul through the physicality of things. And I think with the digital, it's even more important that the digital and the physical goes together and creates like new connections. So this is just a reminder of what my design philosophy is called. It's called hybrid reconstruction. So it's a personally designed design philosophy about morphing fragments from generic garments into one hybrid object. Sorry. Yeah, okay. Somebody calls me. That should not be happening. Okay, so not this. Okay, she's persistent. Okay. Sorry about that. Into one hybrid objects. Okay, sorry, I just want to stop this. Okay, now it stopped, I think. Okay, sorry about that. There was a confusion.
No.
Into one hybrid object of seamless design process of reconstruction where the possibilities are endless. So I really like this idea of open endless possibilities of the outcomes. So maybe this is of my final collection was called Ground Zero. It became the beginning of my brand. The 4 trilogies I did with my brand, because I like to work in trilogies, because I think as a creative, when you can repeat yourself 3 times, you have more chance to develop more facets of the same object, instead of just coming with one idea, one season. I also think it's a more sustainable practice as a designer that we can evolve our ideas instead of having to come with new ideas all the time. And this is also just like an overview of my film process, because I became like interested into fashion film because I was collaborating with a photographer called Nick Knight. And this is just like also to show you, for instance, maybe some of you have wondered why I have like the / and the underscore in my logo. It was because when in 2000s, when I was coming up with my brand name, it was my own name, of course, and then I was looking for a logo design. But then I saw that on the website, you have the / and the underscores. And I thought, okay, this is really good because I like the lines with my name, but they're also like, they're formulas, you know, it's like coding, you know, and I thought it's not decoration. I don't like decorations, I like utility. So because of that, these kind of / and underscores are utility programming in my thinking. And then again, it also reminds me of the cutting, the slice cutting into garments, you know, or the in-between gender of unisex thinking. And this amalgamation about art, process, and tech language, I think is really part of my design thinking. It's a bit like I slice cut a bit of a tuxedo and a shirt and a t-shirt together, and it becomes a tux shirt t-shirt. So it's kind of playing with semantics in my design thing. And this is what I'm still doing today. Some examples of these kind of tuxedo shirt t-shirt dresses, where you have a little bit of fragments of the shirt mixed with the t-shirts. And some of the hybrid design thinking I did, like an inverted Converse, it became a high heel, sporty tuxedo jackets, and morphed like 70s glam, iconically in the Pharaoh sunglasses with like a more androgynous pair of sunglasses, aviator. It's just my design thinking. And this is a film I wanted to show you that I did in collaboration with the Ignited to, okay, where did it go? Yeah, so here's the film. And so during the film process with Ignite, we discovered the glitch. And this is again how the technology informed my creativity. So this VHS glitch is really a significance of my design thinking, that it was technology that helped me devolve my design thinking and not the creativity of that. So I really like that kind of working with the glitch. Some other film collaborations I did, you can see there's another film collaboration where I play with the slice cutting. So again, the cutting into the image, cutting into the object. Exhibitions I did in Paris at the Louvre at the top, and at the bottom at the V&A in London, where I was part of the Anna Piaggi fashion exhibition. So I've been very lucky that my designs, my conceptual designs have been recognized around the world, and also fashion magazines like Vogue, Flair, and 10 magazine. Really put into the high fashion game. An image I really love from the Louvre, where you can see my coat in the middle with the futuristic neon lights. And I think this is that kind of meta-modern mixture of like classical beauty of the past, but with some kind of futuristic ideas of the neon lights. Then the pandemic happened. I've been really lucky since 2008 to get funding from the Danish Art Foundation to continue my practice as a designer, but not in a commercial manner, but more on an art platform, you know, by doing like yearly capsule collections and getting funding to do like these film collaborations. In 2000, I collaborated with Arts Thread, who is like the world's first and biggest art and design graduate portfolio platform. And I said to them, we need to have a platform for the students during the pandemic to be able to showcase their work. And we contacted ID Magazine, that became media partner, and Gucci became the sponsor of the event. And since 2020, there's a yearly graduate show that is being launched, where all the graduates around the world can participate in a competition and be selected to be part of this platform. And this move to digital was really like infused by Zoom and Clo 3D, like we are all on Zoom now. And now we're getting used to how we can work with these things. And this kind of inspired my recent transformation with the Generic Sense project. It became like a collaboration in London Fashion Week, and then the latest projects that I'll show you in the next slides. So this is just a little introduction to the fashion films I've done over the years, so you can see how I like the collections. Then this is also examples of a collection I did in London Fashion Week, where young people were wearing my archive garments, and we've documented in this kind of triptych setting, showcasing the archive design pieces. And this is the film I did like last year, actually filmed in a building that was just next to my flat in London during the pandemic. It was in construction, and I thought this kind of idea of in construction was a perfect setting for the collection I developed during London Fashion Week a year ago. And that is kind of the one that I am launching this coming London Fashion Week with the new capsule collection. And you can maybe see how this deconstructed seam, trench coat, jacket details are the same ideologies that are used in my collections at the Hermès and Martins. So I'm not a designer who changes a lot. My method is the same, but it's the incarnations of the designs that changes over time. And I think that's very unusual compared to other designers, you know, that the design philosophy is the core of the design thinking. Some examples of the exhibition I did in London Fashion Week during the pandemic with the archive pieces. And this is just an example of my first interaction with like a digital format. I did like an immersive gallery space during the pandemic. And I thought, okay, this is a bit boring, like normal walls with pictures on the wall. How can I make it disruptive? So I just said, how big can I make the pictures? So I just did them big from floor to ceiling. I thought, oh, that's really already good. It's quite immersive. And then on one of them, you can see that when I push the image to the corner, because I just want to see a little bit of the corner, then suddenly the digital glitch let it get out on the other side of the corner. I thought, this is quite interesting. You can do this in the technical form, but that you can't do in the real form. So I'm just trying to always find like, how can I convert or how can I subvert the tech side and make it more interesting? And this is like the project I did in last London Fashion Week called SENS. That is really like a project where I collaborated with like 6 different artists from around the world. And we, these are the artists that I reached out to them on Instagram and Facebook. I just contacted them and say, I have a project in London Fashion Week, would you be interested in collaborating? And they were all like interested. And for like a month and a half, I collaborated with like artists in Australia, in Mumbai, Amsterdam, London, and New York, in different time zones, in different continents, through Zoom, Slack, WhatsApp, all these kind of digital medias. And we were like collaborating as a design studio, but not in a physical space. And I think it's really great that you can do this today. You know, there's a new way of working. Yeah, and then I was very lucky to collaborate with Virtual Touch, who is like an amazing small boutique design lab in Hong Kong. I had been introduced to them through Art Thread in London, and they are developing like new immersive like showroom gallery spaces. And through our collaboration, they've actually asked me to join the startup as creative director, because they realized that my fashion background of liking to disrupt the system and see how can we change things, or can we do like this, or can we do like that, is really something that they can use in their development of the tools. Because I think, how can we make it to look less commercial, to look more like an art place, you know? Because I think even commercial brands, they don't want to be in a commercial fashion context. They want to look like it's an art gallery, and everybody wants it to look better, even if what you want to do is that it's to sell or it's to communicate. But because there's so many platforms, there's so many tools today, so much visual information, it's really important that when you do something, that it has to stand out, and that the more creative and high profile it is, I think people have a better chance to make an impact. So this is just like an overview of the collection we did in London Fashion Week last time. You know, it was like 10 looks that came into the space that you can see here. This is the space that Virtual Touch had developed for me from zero, and it was like a collaboration. I wanted a space that was like a meditative Himalayan landscape post-pandemic, but then morphed with this aesthetic of a super studio. Like it is designed from Virtual Touch, and the founder, Casey Mann, and I asked them if they would be collaborating with me to kind of create this kind of immersive gallery space that we developed together. And they said yes, so we collaborated on this virtual space. And then it took us like 2 months to develop. They spent a lot of time with me with design sketches. Really been inspired by Super Studio and the way they mix and cut and paste together. Images they find, they look like European architecture. And it's the same link I do to metaverse that mix like things, past things, the future. So in Recon is like the latest trilogy that I started last season with this film collaboration where I explored the glitch. And for this new digital installment, I was looking into how can I explore the aesthetic of the glitch, which is unique and developed over the years of filmmakers quite young. It's like the end of the glitch, because it's this kind of mix you can just really interesting. Yes, so a lot of people to thank you for the collaboration, because, you know, at the end, I'm just one person, and without collaboration, the brand doesn't exist. And I think, you know, this idea of collaboration, you know, what Claire talked about in the beginning, and Jen, this idea of collaboration between fashion and tech, or tech and creativity, I think is really important for the future, you know, because if we are just like technologists or engineers, we can of course be creative with our means, but if we open up to like creative to come in and join the conversation, then we have a better chance to really see what it is. And so I just want to show a little clip of the film. You may have had a look at it already, yeah, but you can see how the glitch and everything is part of the process, you know. At the base, it was like one shirt that I had done 4 years ago in patterns. It was a digital pattern that then were integrated into a digital pattern. And then it was going to the fashion designers. And then when I was like pulling the garments into 3D, you get all these polygon seams. And I normally work in black and white, and people think, oh, Jens, he only likes black and white. But in the beginning, it was because when you have a small brand, you don't have the budget to have new colors that are your own. So we're limited to what is in stock service, and black and white was always available. And it's also a bit conceptual like that. But with the digital, I found it's really interesting how quickly you can iterate with colors and play with textures and surface, and just experiment in ways that you wouldn't do in physical. And I do love how all these colors come out of these hidden colors that are inside the garment. So I can kind of see like my farm village in the clothes 3D that I was able to do with the artist in the 4 months, or the 2 months collaboration. Yeah, it was quite intense, but I think it was really good result at the end. And this is another example of collaboration I did during the Metaverse Fashion Week Summit. Swagger, which is like a quite famous Metaverse platform in Japan. They have their own collaboration platform, their own process. They reached out to me and asked if I want to collaborate with my design in their showrooms. They had a Metaverse showroom that was a pop-up showroom during the Metaverse Fashion Council Summit. Currently talking to them about maybe collaborating more. So it just shows again how tech companies and creativity really goes hand in hand and how we can collaborate around this. And then at the end, I just wanted to quickly show you, like, so this is something I came up with Metaverse Fashion Council to do this call out for collaboration. So the idea is to have what I call the SENS Trilogy Collective, because SENS is the name of this trilogy I'm working on currently. The one before was called High Recon. It's an abbreviation of hybrid reconstruction. And before that, it was Ground Zero, Inside Out. So there was like other names of the trilogies. But this is the SENS Trilogy because it's dedicated to the metaverse, to the metamodernism that I love, and also the metaphysical side of fashion. You know, what is the next level of fashion? What is the over level, you know? And I think in the meta, there's always the purpose to going beyond what we already know to find the over meaning of things. And sense, of course, it rhymes with JENS, but also because it means sense, meaning, you know, and in French it's sens. So it has these kind of the two words, and it's kind of the theme of this collaboration that I'm proposing for this trilogy. And I'm looking for digital designers, fashion designers, tech people, partners, sponsors, corporations who are interested in developing new ideas of creativity. And, you know, so I think it's really like a beginning of something that could be quite interesting, you know. So it's really about defining a manifest of hybrid reconstruction and the method at its core of the brand matrix, you know. So it's really about how to develop something that's interesting, that's conceptual. And these are examples of the collection that I'm showing on the Fashion Week, where you can see the deconstructed trench coat details put onto more commercial pieces, because I want these pieces to be worn by people around the world. And I kind of predict that the sweatshirt hoodie, the tailored sweatshirt hoodie, my hybrid tailored hoodie could become like the uniform of the 21st century. Because, you know, tailored jackets is not so much in fashion anymore, but how can we get these kind of protective tailored symbols onto the garments that everybody wears, in between the trench coat, hoodies, so this is kind of what I'm presenting in London Fashion Week. And so you have the preview of it. I haven't really shown it to anyone yet. So I also have a manifest that, of course, has a lot of thinking. There's a website page on my website that I'll share in the chat box. So everybody who's interested in collaborating, they can reach out to me. But this is really how I see this MetaSense brand. You know, it's like an atomic brand structure, you know, where the ideas and the concepts are in the middle. And then you have like these orbits around the brand that are like, you know, like capsule collection, collaborations, collaborators coming in and out of the orbit sphere. And I think this is really how I see a brand. You know, it has to be organic. It has to be able to change, like, you know, nothing is static. And I think that a brand that is static and corporations that are static today, they have to move with times, you know, because when we have these big influences from the outside, like the wars or the threats or all these kind of things, the pandemic, you know, if you don't move with times, then you get really frustrated, you know. And I think this is really what it's about, to be able to move with times and what is happening around us and react to what is happening in front of us. As a parenthesis, this is also inspired by my own spiritual awakening during the pandemic. You know, I've been going into like meditation. So I think that's why I want to push for a more holistic concept of this brand that is more focusing on this philosophy, but also how can you develop like things around the philosophy that has meaning for everybody, also the collaborators. So this is what I'm calling out for digital designers, artist collaborations, focus on garment construction, digital twins, and NFT. So all these are the things that I'm interested in, like a research project. And I'm really open to collaborating with like creatives or companies or corporations or engineers, tech partners, VR experience, sponsors, corporate partners, and everything. So in London Fashion Week, I'm currently working on it for now. I will have an event that will be closing London Fashion Week on the 21st of February. There will be a digital call out that I will share with Claire and Jen. So of course, you're all cordially invited. And there will be like, for the ones who are in London, there'll be a sign up through Eventbrite. So people who are in London can sign up to come and view. And for everybody else, we will be doing like an online virtual showcase, both in London Fashion Week website, but also my own website that I'll be sharing with everybody. And yeah, so it's really like an open invitation for people who would like to collaborate, to be part of the journey, to join out and come. Okay. So this is kind of my presentation for today. I think that was the last page. Yeah, here are my contact details. So if anybody is interested, come to reach me out and reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm very open to that. And I found in the tech world, everybody network on LinkedIn, you know, the emails are really a hassle because we get so many emails, so much spam. And I find that on LinkedIn, there's a little bit of spam, but not too much. It's not like on our email box, you know, there can be a lot of it. So please reach out to me, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Discord. I'm even on Discord, you know, so I'm trying to be in the places you have to be. Yeah, and I look forward to hearing from you and perhaps collaborating in the future.
Great. Thank you so much for a brilliant presentation, Jens. And
I'm happy.
yeah, we've learned a lot from your experience.
You know, maybe there's some questions.
Yeah, now it's the Q&A session, and then welcome everyone. You can just you know, unmute your microphone or type your questions in the chat box.
I think that we have questions in the box already.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's the Omobola Lanle, yes, saying so she's studied in microbiology for her first degree, and now she's in fashion. So she's worked in the fashion industry for 7 years, and then now currently the product development lead at the company, and someone who is more interested in the functionality and development of garments over the design aspects. So where do you see the future of fashion in tech morphing into as regards producing actual garments?
Yeah. So I do really, I mean, I know a lot of people today, they want to just push for digital fashion, because I think a lot of young people who learned during the pandemic, they had very little pattern cutting, teaching, you know, and suddenly they realized you can have a digital brand, it can exist online, you do a website, it exists, and it can have a following, you can start to sell that. But I do think, I mean, what is the purpose of a brand? Is it just to communicate your ideas, or is it also to touch consumers? And I think, how can we touch consumers, you know? So obviously, clothing is something we have to wear in the past because it was cold. Now we all live like in air-conditioned heating, so we don't need clothes in the same way. I come from Denmark, so of course in the winter it's more cold, in the summer it's more hot, so we take more or less clothes off and on. But if you look at us as people, you know, of course the clothing is like 90% of our communication surface. So the way we dress is really important in everyday life. Even on Zoom, you know, we have the head, but we also have like what we're wearing up here. So the clothing is really important in the physical world. It is very important in the digital world too, especially it was important before, like in the gaming industry, you know, there's always been avatars being dressed in funny clothing. And I think a lot of gamers, they have a total purpose of being in the metaverse. They're there because they love to game, they love to find friends, they love to communicate, they love to chat. So for them, that's their purpose. I do think fashion have not found the purpose there yet. But I think it's a little bit at the beginning of a mobile phone or the real phone. What was the purpose of a phone? The beginning of the television, what was the purpose? We didn't really know. And very few people were like early adapters. And today we only have early adapters who actually buy digital garments. But I think we're just at the beginning, you know, and it's up to us, the creators in the industry, to really think about how can we make this in a way so it is purposeful and meaningful for the consumer. And it becomes like a collaboration process. So I kind of see like the brand is in the middle. But what is this metaverse around the brand that is kind of irreal? It's not really there. There's a brand, there's a physical, and then there's a metaverse. So the metaverse is just beyond everything. What else that is not in a physical store can be metaverse. Anything that's on the WhatsApp can be metaverse. Social media is metaverse. Anything that's digital, then anything that's through the phone that we have in front of us can be metaverse, you know. Anything that's an AR filter can be metaverse. A GIF can be metaverse too, because it's not showing the real product, it's showing a different version of the product. So I think my love for the glitch is the beginning of the metaverse manifesting. So the metaverse is just there as an open book, a white space that we have to fill, and it's up to the brands and the creators to fill it with really interesting stuff that we don't know yet what it is. And we're at the beginning, so it's up to us to really collaborate and be really creative. And I think we have to merge fields together, you know, because in the past, the scientist was a scientist, the creative was a creative, there was no collaboration. But I think this kind of union of the two sides, it's a bit like the yin and yang, you know, it's not male nor female, it's intertwined, you know, and you know, well, the yin and yang sign, it's not like 50% black and 50% white, it's like intertwined into each other, you know. And as people, we have both male and female chromosome anyway. Some of us are more totally masculine to look at, some of us are more feminine, and some of us are quite a lot in between. And I think this idea of gender, that you're either or, is a bit a thing of the past. We are a bit of everything, you know, we are both in between. So I think this idea of the in-between meta-modernist philosophy that I believe in, we are oscillating between things, you know, masculine, feminine, technology, creativity, all these things that happen. It's not so much this mathematics or the science and the art that's interesting. I think today's the field in between, and it's much bigger than the two poles, you know. So it's about the oscillation and going with the flow, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. Now it's just like, you know, everything is possible, and then anything can be possible.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was a child in Denmark in the 70s, I read a lot of science fiction books, and I was thinking about it recently. So I come from a farm. So I both love to go to the forest. We had a small forest next to us, to go around, wander, build wells, have a little cage, you know, have a little kitchen, you know, go to the river, watch, you know, to just do everything like in a nature metaverse. What you can do in a virtual metaverse, you can play roles, you know, you can have friends, you know, you can have an image. I even had an imaginary friend who didn't exist, you know, when I was a child, because we didn't have any connections to people. There was not many neighbors. And when I didn't have a friend, I just imagined the friend, you know, not even on the internet, there was nothing, you know. So if you had to talk to somebody, you had to go to the phone, and it had to be home. You couldn't leave a phone message. If there was nobody home, there was nobody to leave a message to you, so you had to call back. So it's just like the way to communicate is very different today. And I think my love for the science fiction at the time probably started to open the world. How can you make this hybridization in between the worlds?
Yes,
That's
a lot of
great.
creativity as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dirk is asking, how do you see in the future of fashion is going when IoT and sensors are connected to humans in a virtual environments?
That's a big question. It's a very interesting one, I think, you know, because we don't know where we are yet. But I think there would be a lot of interconnected technology that would be on our bodies, maybe in our bodies or around our bodies, you know. And I think a lot of it can be very useful, you know, for health issues. You know, you could imagine like devices that are there to detect illness before they come. Imagine to have an app on your phone. At the beginning, you're starting to get a cancer, and it suddenly tells you something in your body is not right, that you have to take care of this, go and check it, instead of having to wait for the metastasis to be in the body and it's too late to do anything about it. So I think there's something called transhumanism. It's a bit like being fearful of the machine. We've always been fearful of robots because the robots could be mean, take over and destroy us, you know. And yes, of course, if robots are done by evil people, they could become mean. But I mean, in the old school way of seeing of robots, of course, AI is a bit more difficult, because once we teach them to have intelligence, you know, how can we limit their intelligence so they only do good stuff? And how can we be sure that the scientists who are programming the robots are good people? You know, even not so good people become leaders of big countries in the world. So how can we be sure that the scientists are only good people? You know, we don't know exactly. So it's up to us to be ethical about it, and to have faith in the evolution, and to be optimistic instead of being pessimistic. Even if the Times wants us to be more pessimistic than optimistic. It's not easy to be optimistic in these times, but I think it is really the time where we need people to be optimistic, because there's so much darkness around us and so many challenges.
Yes. So so we have a question from Taiwan, that, you know, we've got quite a few young designers, and then they are creating their own brand. And what's your suggestion that if they start their own brand, it's just a small brand, and then obviously in your presentation you mentioned that, you know, if you start from a small brand, you have to start from the square one, and you don't have any resources or anything, then how do you suggest them to start to begin with?
I think it's really important to learn as much craft as you can, both physical technology and digital craft, you know, but it's really, if you want to be a fashion designer, you really have to know about pattern cutting and hand drawing before you learn about the digital pattern cutting, hand drawing, because I've seen some of the artists I worked with during the pandemic, the digital designers, they had not had a lot of pattern cutting teaching, you know, and when you do Clo 3D, in gaming, you can just pull the fabric, it's like Lycra, it doesn't really matter, but if you want to do real garments, a breast dart around a female body has to be in a specific place, unless if it's like a really creates. So I think it's about learning about the rules before you're breaking the rules. You know, I think that's a good thing, you know. So my biggest achievement was probably studying couture before I did the fashion, and then before doing the metaverse, because my hand was trained by somebody who worked for Cristobal Balenciaga in Paris in the 60s. So I have this kind of very classical training in how to create volume around the body in an abstract manner, just by pinning flat fabric around the body. So I can only advise them to do as many learnings in multiple platforms as they can possibly get in, even if they don't have the time to master everything. Like me, I don't master Photoshop, I don't master Clo 3D, but then that's where you have to collaborate instead of maybe being one small designer with a designer brand. It's my name, is my brand. I know my brand was called JENS Laugesen before. Now I'm rebaptizing it just to Laugesen to take a bit the persona ego away from the brand. So it's more about the methodology of Laugesen. And then it becomes a brand. And maybe the future is for young designers, instead of being one person, one brand, to be like 2-3 designers, becomes a collective. And then you work together, and somebody's better in pattern cutting, somebody more digital, and somebody can do the PR. So you kind of make small collectives of creative thinking, because also it is less hard work if you have 3 people to share the challenges and the stress, and if you're just one person. But of course, the idea of to have a designer brand with your own name is very flattering for the ego of the persona, but sometimes that can also destroy the creativity of the brand, that the ego of the persona, the designer, takes over, and it doesn't open up to allowing other people in to join the brand and to make it into a business. So I think a small designer brand can become a business, but you need to find business partners for that too. So, and if you want to do digital and physical fashion, I think it's good to make a small capsule collection, very small, implement the possibilities of both the physical and digital aspects. And then you have a case study, and then you can see, oh, how is this working? You know, then how can you scale it and to make it bigger? But slowly, small steps, and stay really focused in the beginning to find like a core concept. I think it's really important. Yeah, and try to think about something that nobody else has done already. Why is your brand different to everybody else? It's not just because you are creative and you have ideas that is interesting, but what does it actually bring to other people? What is the purpose? Why would somebody buy your brand today? Because there's so many fashion designers. You can have a brand, you can have a website, you can Instagram, it exists, but there's so much stuff to buy. But why would somebody buy your brand and not somebody else's brand? This is, I think, important to ask yourself. And this is not something that you're being taught in fashion school. But that's kind of when you're going to enter the market. It's important to think about who's going to buy the brand, because at the end, the brand only exists if there's a consumer.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
I put in sorry, I just want to anchor this question, and
sure.
Can I put it in this way, that designer is not just someone who know how to design, but also he or she needs to know how to be a good communicator, because we need to deliver the message to our consumers or our target audience. Also, yeah, we need to have some leadership, because we also need to collaborate with other people to have the team. Also, we need to have the ability to create a self-owned ecosystem. Can I put it in that way? Yeah, because you mentioned that well, there are so many people behind the brand, not only just one person, one designer, but there are so many other people's efforts into it.
Yeah. No, I think the idea of collaboration and being a brand more than one person, because I think when I did my brand the first time, of course, it was Jens Laugesen on the Fashion Week. That's how I got the sponsorship, because it was focused on being that designer performing in Fashion Week. But it also didn't help me to build a business out of it, because once you're in that space, you know, how can somebody else join your brand if it's just focused on the designer personality of one person? And I never really liked the idea of being like the sole designer of the team. So at the time, I often talked about Jens Laugesen's studio, because I like the idea that it's not created by me, but by the studio. And I think this idea of the collective brand is also something that I'm thinking about, the Laugesen brand. How could that become like a collective design thinking? You know, of course, at the beginning, it started with my ideas, the Laugesen ideas, but then how can there be a team around it? How can there be like a community? So I'm also thinking about how to create like maybe a decentralized autonomous organization community platform around the brand in the future, because I think if you start small and you think small, then it becomes a small brand. But if you start small and you have proof of the bigger concept, then there's possibilities of designing a new brand structure that can disrupt the system around this idea of the brand, a concept-led brand community platform that is not just about doing clothes, but that can be like a media platform, that could be a gallery space, a collaborative space. It could even become like a fashion design game that could kind of make people interact with the gaming industry in a very different way, in a more creative way, instead of killing each other. You know, it could be like a creative space, educational space, a co-creation, collaborative space. I think there's a huge potential for thinking about how your brand is a vehicle for something. It's not just the desire of the designers to produce your ideas. Then it's about your needs. But what is the purpose of your brand? I think that's really important post-pandemic to think about. Why is your brand important to others? What can they get out of it from it? And once you think about that, then you have a business. If it's just about what you want to show, then it's not a business. Then you're like an artist, and people may buy it because they like it or not. If people buy the art, it's because they want to put it on the wall. It fits their home. You have a blue furniture in the home. You want a blue painting that fits with the furniture. Or if you buy it, it can also be an investment. But if it brings purpose to people's lives, then they want to wear it every day. And then it's something that belongs to their lives. And it's much more powerful if you can build a brand that has purpose in people's lives.
Yeah, it's also more meaningful as well. Yeah.
And it's also more meaningful for everybody, you know, that we're not just there to do commerce, but we also, of course, everything has to be sustainable today. I mean, the big corporations are using that word a lot. They're greenwashing a lot. So it's not possible to be 100% sustainable. It's impossible. But as humans, because we consume a lot, we have to consume less and better and clean up after us, you know. So when we consume something, we also have to design the places to get rid of the pollution that we're creating, you know, so we're not making the world a more polluted space, you know. That's the challenge we have, to create both new products, but also the new devices to how to get rid of the garbage that we are creating and not just polluting the world.
Indeed. Yeah. Okay.
Got another question from Dirk.
Yeah, we've got another question from Dirk as well. How do you measure KPIs in the metaverse? Visit pages and conversion rates, or how long a digital item is on an avatar? I think this is what brands are interested in, connecting virtual world with in real world events into a token gated experience.
This sounds very hardcore tech, you know, and I understand all the language. But again, I think it's about creating the purpose, and then of course there'll be people around that can look at the key performance indicators of how these things are measured in business terms, you know. So I'm obviously more like a creative marketer, so I can create the event, and then I would be collaborating with people around me that would be doing all these things. But of course, brands need to measure these things, and you know, data is today key. We know Facebook owns all Facebook, or Meta as they want to be called. It's not because they're called Meta that they actually own the metaverse. Actually, Facebook has nothing to do with the metaverse, because they are like they're not a decentralized organization. They are a centralized organization, and they want to own the people's contribution to Facebook. So even if they call themselves Meta, doesn't make them to a metaverse concept, because it's not transparent what they do. If it was transparent, then it could be a DAO, but it's not. So all these corporations trying to pretend to be green or sustainable or metaverse, they're not necessarily. So it's up to brands and consumers to say, this is what we want. Of course, there's no regulations about what a DAO can be today. That's the problem with blockchain. It's not in a legal system that we know of, but then it's up to humanity to design that legal system. We have a world that's bigger than what we knew. And now we need to create new rules and forms, you know. Post-Second World War, we had to create like EU, you know, NATO, to kind of prevent future wars in Europe. And then 50 years later, we have wars in Europe, you know. So once something changes the world, we need to create new structures to regulate that new world. And yeah, and it's not easy in these times, you know, because there there's a lot of people who wants to take advantage of this new world and make it into their world, not to make it a collective world. But I'm quite hopeful. I think this is a time where we can use maybe lessons of the hippie time of the 60s. You know, this is like an utopia that we can create. Of course, it can become a dystopia if we don't take care of it properly, but that's up to us to take care of it properly, each individual one at a time. So I'm not sure if that really answered the very technical question, Dirk. But maybe you have some other perspectives to share from that point too, if that's something you're interested in. But I can see like everything seems to token gated experiences. That's again what you can see today. We have a lot of different metaverse. There's not one metaverse. The metaverse is everything together. So in that you have sandbox, you've got different metaverse, and everybody has their own metaverse. This is my metaverse. This is my country. This is my border, and you cannot go from one metaverse to the other. So of course that is a huge challenge right now. And also when brands collaborate with Sandbox, the garments that do in Sandbox cannot be used elsewhere. But I know there's a lot of research being put into that right now, because consumers want them to be interchangeable. And now, why shouldn't it be? You know, I can use this garment, but only in this game. That's a bit silly, you know. If you have a garment, you can use in many different places. I mean, if you can stream on Spotify music, then it's also possible to design this. It's just up to us to design it, I think. But I'm not sure a lot of the blockchain corporations are interested into that. Because once they lose control of where things are, it's more collective, and maybe that's not what is in their interest, because they're there to make money of their territory, not to share the profit with everybody. That's not that's not a normal way to be a shareholder. To want to share your profit share with everybody else. You want to have your profit share, but not share it with other people, you know. And yeah, but I think in this new world, that it can be really good and it can be bad, but it's up to us to be positive and optimistic and create the norms, or maybe make a manifest, or make the new laws and regulations that we need to kind of navigate this world.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think for general publics or for designers or the creators, the interoperability among the metaverses are really crucial. And I believe that, you know, now there are some people are working on the protocols as well. So, you know, I hope that soon you will see this this happening, because
I think
it's also
I think it would be happening sooner than later for sure. But I mean, also the other day, I also teach at Westminster University in London. I teach the fashion, branding, and communication students. And I asked them, so how many of you guys are actually going into these metaverse spaces like Meta, Sandbox, and all this? There was like 3 of them out of 40 students, you know. I said, okay, why are you not going more into these spaces? Oh, it's a bit boring, they said. And I give them right. You know, when I go into spatial or to whatever place, once I've seen a space, I've seen it. Why would I come back if it's the same space, you know? It's like a shop. You go to a shop, you buy what you need, and then do you go back before there's new goods? No, you only go back when there's new season or new goods. If it's the same goods, why would you go back unless if you know exactly what you need? So the purpose is, I need that t-shirt in that shop. I go back to the shop because they have the t-shirt I need. If you went to the shop, there's nothing you like, and you know they have no new products, why would you go back to the shop? So it's up to really people who are in the metaverse space to create experiences. Experiences that are key. So you can see Dirk has been saying, I see at the moment we are into transaction from Web 2 to Web 3, and we need to onboard in an easy way to consumers. We are still in the Web 2 mindset, you know. The people who are trying to build Web 3 have the Web 2 mindset because they are all technocrats and they come from this imperialistic, like centralized system, and now they try to enter that world because they have to, you know. So they're like in between. But I think the generation after this that are Web3 native from inception, you know, the Gen Z generation, that's very different. You know, once they would be in power, it would be a very different game, you know. Once we have more women in power, it would be a very different game, because this world, especially the blockchain world, is still male dominated. And I applaud you two ladies for really bringing like a positive feminine voice into this world, because I think the tech world needs more like intuitive approaches, creative approaches, more consensus approaches, you know. And that's also why I didn't talk about that, but during the pandemic I also launched like I've launched like a consultancy agency called Consens X, again playing with the word of sense, and then con from consensus. And the X was about the collaboration, but also about the technology. And I think, you know, this is really a space where we could work together as a collective to create a better future.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I think our time is Claire. Would you?
Yeah. No, I just want to anchor what Jens mentioned about the girls in tech, because in Taiwan, actually we promote the girls, especially in the engineers part, very hard, and it's very active. It's a very active community based in Taiwan. Yeah. So welcome. If you need any female engineers about for the blockchain, any other data scientists, come to us.
I think we should launch like a hackathon. I like the idea to do the hackathon.
Oh definitely.
It's like Taiwan, like, you know, we could come up with a concept, like a little project together, and maybe next year in the event you mentioned next October, we could launch something together, you know, like a creative new way of collaborating. You know, I could do stuff from London, and maybe you could find a sponsor and bring me to Taiwan for the event, and could do like a big presentation of the project outcome or something like that.
I think that we are planning to have this hackathon in Q1 or Q2 next year, because we want to have something we can show in the Asia Fashion Tech Week. So
I think let's collaborate on that, because, you know, I have my SENS Trilogy collective, where we could do like a small sub project with you guys and with the people there, you know, or the people in your community who want to collaborate on this, and we come up with like a nice brief and see how we could, because I have this idea of doing like of course, we can all be in the same place for the hackathon, but it can also be in different places for the hackathon. So there's different ways to organize the hackathons. But I think it's both ways are interesting. You know, the physical is very different to the tech, but I think you could have like a hackathon that both have a physical implementation and a digital implementation. So it's like the core, and then you have like the meta core. It could be really interesting. Yeah, and I would love to visit Taiwan.
How exciting!
Welcome.
So exciting.
Yeah.
It's okay. Thank you, everyone, and then thanks, Jens. So happy to have you today, and so we'll see you in 2023 then. Happy holiday, everyone.
I'll make sure you're all invited to London Fashion Week for the digital experience of what I'm doing.
Awesome. Okay, happy holiday and happy new year.
Happy holiday
to all of you. Yes, thank you, everyone. And we will post the link of today's talk on YouTube next week. So if you need to see the more details please stay tuned with us. Thank you so much, Yan. Happy holiday.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, everyone. Bye.
Ciao. Ciao.